Man, I love fall. Wake Up Mintzy, presented by the fine folks of Dude Wipes. We are not live from the Chicago office. It's a glorious fall morning. You feel the breeze in the air. You got the hoodies out. Walking to work, the vibes are high. You know, we're far enough away from that disaster of a football weekend to where we're back in good spirits, and we're trying to be optimistic toward this weekend. As always, presented by Dude Wipes. Let it rip with Dude Wipes. Check out their Dumpkin Spice brand. I mean, what's better than fall and Dumpkin Spice Dude Wipes? Walmart, Target, Amazon, nationwide on the World Wide Web. Dude Wipes, it's a revolution. It'll change your life. And as always, chugging some Stella Blue iced coffee to get the day going. Kind of was in the mode where I switched to hot coffee with the breeze in the air yesterday. We're kind of in like the half hot, half iced with this weather change. Joined as always by Tyler Moody from Louisiana. We've got Billy Luchi, head of TexAgs.com, the King Texas A&M Aggie, on at 9:15 to talk some SEC football. But first, let's get to Mr. Moody. Let's get to the Major League Baseball playoffs. Let's talk some DraftKings. Let's make some damn money. Moody, how are you this morning?
Hey, what's up, Ben? Good morning. Pretty solid day yesterday for Major League Baseball. I know they hate the fact that the Astros got bounced, the Orioles got bounced, and the Braves got bounced. It's not what Major League Baseball wanted, but I think yesterday, as baseball fans, everyone enjoyed. We had teams like the Tigers and the Royals punching their ticket to the next round.
Yeah, we're going to get right to it. So, okay, the 4 2 out of 3 series, 3 of them are done. We'll start with Tigers-Astros yesterday. I talked on here about me hopping on the Astros for value after they lost game 1. That was a very stupid move. What are you going to do?
I don't know that it was a stupid move. I mean, they were the favorite. They were 1 out away from getting out of a situation with one of the best pitchers in baseball. Ibanez just put a great swing on a good pitch, too. Like, it was a great game. If you watched the entire game yesterday, you were very happy as a baseball fan because you watched a legendary team get taken down by a team that's on a legendary run.
No, I agree. And so the Tigers just came out of nowhere. They sweep the Astros. That game, but both those games, I watched the whole games. I'm into the look. I'll admit this. Y'all know I'm super transparent about everything. I'm a college baseball guy. I usually don't watch much MLB. I'm riveted by the MLB playoffs. I'm turning into an October MLB guy because you can just feel the intensity of every pitch in the postseason. I actually like the newer format that they did the last few years, the 2 out of 3 and the 3 out of 5, getting more teams in, giving more franchises like the Tigers an opportunity. And that Tigers-Astros 2-game series, man, so much to unpack from it. Looking at that game, the Tigers Parker Meadows hit the home run at the top of the 6th to get up 1-0. The Astros got the bases loaded with nobody out. They got 2 runs in. That double play in the bottom of the 7th when they were up 2-1. I remember thinking, I was like, man, they needed more than 2 there. Yep. And then the Tigers got that top of the 8th, got that 3-run double by Banez, and Presley for the Astros is allowed no runs in 20 innings of postseason. And I guess water always finds its level. The Astros make freaking 7 straight ALCSs, and finally it had to end.
Yeah, they just finally ran out of gas. I think the same thing can be said with Presley. He ran out of gas as well. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball the last few years, but he wasn't as good this year. And obviously, we saw what happened yesterday. A huge moment. That double play that you talked about, whenever Kyle Tucker came up and grounded into that double play, was one of the biggest moments because let's say he just pops up or strikes out right there. Then you have Yordan Alvarez right behind him who has a chance to possibly blow that game open. I think Yordan comes through in that moment. Unfortunately for the Astros, Kyle Tucker did not. Crazy to watch. It's crazy to think that this may be the end of the Astros as we know them. Altuve, Bregman is the one that really is up for grabs. I think he's going to enter the free agency market, and I don't know that the Astros are going to have the money to give to him long term. So I would not be shocked if this is the last time we've seen those guys on the field together in an Astros uniform. Pretty crazy, man.
What a run, though. I mean, 2017 to 2023, 2 World Series titles, 7 straight ALCSs, made the World Series, 4 times because they lost to the Braves, or it was 3 times. But, yeah, they beat the Phillies and beat the Dodgers, so they won 2 of them, and then they lost to the Braves in 2021, I believe. Incredible run. All good things must come to an end, I guess. Hitting some of the other ones. So the Tigers move on. They take on the Guardians. Start Saturday. Man, I hate that these teams are playing because they're the ones everybody's pulling for. The dark horses. I really wish they weren't playing each other. But let's talk about, we're going to run through all of them. Royals, Orioles. How about Seth Lugo, our dude from Bossier, Parkway High School, rival high school from Airline, who used to call games for me, and came out, showed up. The Royals sweep the Orioles. In second straight year, the Orioles have had these huge years and gotten swept.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, we've seen a lot of people bagging on the Orioles the last couple of days because of yesterday especially because of their performances now the last 2 seasons. This roster is loaded. They may have the best roster in all of baseball moving forward. The problem is you got to win freaking games. It doesn't matter how good your roster is. It doesn't matter how good your farm system is. You have to find a way to win games. And you have to tip your cap to the Orioles. They went out and got ace pitchers that showed up and did the damn thing in the postseason. Burns, tremendous. Eflin was great yesterday. The offense was who did not show up, and I think that's what most people were not expecting to see from an Orioles team that has been so good at the plate the last 2 seasons, but their stars, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, did not show up when the game mattered the most, and that's why the Orioles are going to be watching the rest of this October.
While the 3 of the 4 teams left in the AL from the AL Central. Wouldn't have bet on that. I mean, because, that was always the division that got rained on as the crappy one. And there are 3 of the 4 teams left. National League stuff, the Brewers bounced back, tied it up against beating the Mets last night. The Mets were up 3-1. Brewers came back and won 5-3. Miller Park was rocking. Glad we got one Game 3 today. I wish we had more, to be honest.
Yeah, great effort by the Mets to come back. Who did we talk about yesterday? Jackson Chourio and William Contreras. If the Brewers were going to win that game, they had to show up. Jackson Chourio left the yard twice. The kid's going to be a superstar. The Mets gave him a big contract before the season even started, a long-term deal that you normally wouldn't give to a guy that has that little service time. They tied him up. He's a Brewer for a long time here, and he started to pay dividends last night. Great effort from him. I'm excited that we have a Game 3. Very interesting that Jose Quintana is going to be on the mound for the Mets. We have a thing in our fantasy league where Jose Quintana one season threw a complete game shutout during the fantasy championships, and my buddy left him on the bench, would have won in the fantasy championship. The next year, he had Jose Quintana, and he starts Jose Quintana in the championship, and he gives up like 7 runs. So Jose Quintana is a guy that has incredible lore in my life and our fantasy life, and I cannot believe that the Mets are going to have their season on the line with freaking Jose Quintana stepping on the hill tonight. It's a wild situation to be in if you're a Mets fan. But this it should be fun. This Mets offense is great. The Brewers have answered the call. I'm excited to see a Game 3 tonight.
All right. Quintana going against Tobias Myers. The Brewers minus $1.30 on DraftKings, over under 7.5. I feel like you like the over just about what you were saying already.
I'd probably like the over. I think I've had this feeling that the Mets are going to get it done here. I'm not as confident in that as I was the Astros yesterday. I was very confident the Astros were going to win yesterday. We took that L, but I lean Mets in the over in this game. Yeah, for sure.
And then finally, the Padres closed out the Braves last night, 5-4. Great. Look, the Braves they were World Series favorites going into the year. I mean, they lost Spencer Strider at the very beginning, their Cy Young candidate. They lost Ronald Acuna, one of the top MVP guys, and they lost a host of other guys. Chris Sale had the back spasms, didn't get to pitch in the playoffs. Yeah. I mean, they gave it everything they had just making the postseason. I think it's like kind of a heroic effort they made it, considering everything that happened this year. But this Padres bunch, people were saying it. They're red hot. This Padres-Dodgers series is going to be something next round.
Padres-Dodgers is going to be incredible. If Chris Sale would have started Game 1 for the Braves, we would at the very least be playing a Game 3 today. I wouldn't be surprised if the Braves would have won it in 2 if they had Sale to open this series up. But that wasn't the case. And that was the thing with Chris Sale for the last few years. He has been injury-prone. He was great all season for the Braves, and it came back to bite them at the worst time possible. On the other side of this, though, the Padres, the trade that they made before the season began, Michael King and a couple of other pieces in exchange for Juan Soto, both teams have just absolutely reaped the benefits of that trade. We've seen what Soto's been doing in New York. We saw what Michael King did in Game 1 for the Padres. You couldn't tip your cap more to what San Diego has done as far as navigating the amount of money that they've had to spend, trading Soto away and getting their guys back healthy, Tatis, and having them perform at the top level. It's been a really fun ride to watch for the Padres. And the Dodgers are just beat up enough for the door to be open here for San Diego to win this series.
Yeah, so it should be a hell of a series. As you mentioned, the Dodgers without Glasnow and Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, that's a rivalry with LA and San Diego out west. So that should be a fascinating series. The Royals going to take on the Yankees, and the Tigers take on the Guardians. Winner of Mets Brewers today, taking on the Phillies. All 3 out of 5 starting on Saturday this weekend. Go ahead.
How lucky are the New York Yankees that the Astros got bounced? That the Astros are their daddy, and I know that Yankees fans have to be so happy to see Houston not facing them at any point during the postseason. Instead, you get 3 teams from the Central. If the Yankees do not win the American League, it will be the biggest choke job that I have seen from a team in Major League Baseball in quite some time. They're going to be heavy favorites to win the American League, and they should be.
All right, also touching Thursday Night Football tonight, we'll have a Barstool stream from the Gambling Cave. NFC South matchup. I wish both teams could lose. It's not possible. Atlanta's a 1.5-point favorite, and I believe 43.5 or 44 the over-under over Tampa. Man, going to be a hell of a game. You can pretty much just every week Atlanta plays, it goes to the gun. I think we're just dealing with another extremely close game here. Tampa 3-1, coming off a big win over Philly. Atlanta 2-2. Just a huge game here because right now you look at the NFC South, Tampa 3-1, Atlanta and the Saints both 2-2. I'm fascinated to see about what happens tonight in that matchup. Kind of looking out for Bucky Irving's over rushing props. He's been looking really good running the ball for Tampa, and I kind of think Darnell Mooney might have a game. I'm sort of leaning over. When I look at this matchup on turf, I think it could get, even though Atlanta hadn't played really shootouts, but I think this thing's going to go to the gun. It could go either way. Tampa's at Atlanta Thursday night, at New Orleans next Sunday. I'm going. They got to at least split one of these two. If they do that, though, with being 3-1, if they can get through these two at 4-2, they'll be in the driver's seat in the NFC South early. We're about to be joined by Billy Luchi of TexAgs.com. I always call him the King Aggie. Does an awesome job covering Texas A&M sports, and we're going to get him on here to talk some SEC football. We had him on right after the College World Series when A&M lost the national championship, and Coach Slosh ditched A&M to go to Texas, and one of the wildest things I've literally ever seen. And but A&M going to be I believe a 2-point favorite over Missouri on Saturday. Big game, 11 a.m. Looking forward to some SEC ball this week. Not the biggest week of college football I've ever seen, but we do have some solid matchups. You look at the SEC, you've got Missouri A&M, Ole Miss, a 9.5-point favorite, South Carolina at 2:30. Tennessee, a 13.5-point favorite at Arkansas. Saturday night, Bama's a 22.5-point favorite at Tennessee. Central Florida favored by 3 at Florida. Very interested to see what happens in that game in the Swamp. That thing, it feels like it could get kind of wild, but maybe not the greatest week we've had, but still a solid week nonetheless. And A&M's also dealing with Will Connor Wegman, the quarterback, who's had a shoulder injury. Will he be able to play, or will Marcel Reed go again? A huge game for Missouri. When you look at where Missouri is right now, they're undefeated. A lot of people thought they had dark horse playoff aspirations. They beat Vandy at OT. They beat Boston College, didn't cover. But you know what? They're undefeated. They're off a bye. They've got a really good quarterback in Brady Cook, one of the best receivers in the country, Luther Burden. Not sure if their defense is quite as good as it was last year when they won 10 games and beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. But we're going to find out everything we need to know about Missouri on Saturday. So super excited to see what happens in that game. Obviously, I'm just already tailgating for 2:30 to see what happens in this Ole Miss-South Carolina game after Ole Miss has lost at home to Kentucky last week. They're saying all the right things. Jackson Dart called the players-only meeting Sunday. You can tell Lane and everyone's taking the loss really, really hard. And so we will see what happens. Ole Miss being a 9.5-point favorite makes me feel pretty good about the Rebels. When you look at this matchup, though, if Ole Miss loses this game, I mean, the season's like all the dreams are over already in early October, and especially with that LSU next week. It looks like Sellers, the quarterback for South Carolina, and Rocket Sanders, the running back, who are both questionable, are going to go. They're off a bye, and we will certainly see what happens there, but I feel like Ole Miss is going to bounce back. I feel like this is the us against the world week where they kind of got a reality check last week, and you're going to see a big bounce back effort. Not sure if I can necessarily lay the 9.5 points in that matchup, but we're waiting on Billy's about to connect here in a second. There's no link. Okay. But looking forward to these games. As I said, it's going to be a hell of a week. And I'm just kind of stoked for some football. And I'll be here for Sunday streams. As always, Barstool, the beat rolls on. I want to shout out again. I've mentioned this on here. I want to shout this out on here. Caleb Presley leading the Mountain Strong T-shirts thing. Just Hurricane Helene, catastrophic damage in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina specifically. I love Western North Carolina. I spend a lot of time there because my family's in that area. I go play poker in Cherokee, run up to the Highlands a lot. Just got hit so hard by Hurricane Helene. This is like almost Katrina. I hadn't seen a hurricane damage this is like Katrina level. And we're selling Mountain Strong shirts to raise money for the Mana Food Bank in Asheville. We've raised over $70,000 already. We got to keep selling these shirts and helping these people. That's what Barstool does. And we're going to keep doing it as always. And thank you for buying them. I bought one and continue to support. Got to continue to support the Hurricane Helene relief efforts. We're waiting on Billy. He's clicking the link right now. But looking around. So football-wise this weekend, super pumped about all that. NFL, big weekend ahead for NFL as well. A lot of interesting games. I'm going to kind of run through and touch on some of them. Bills are a 1-point favorite at the Texans. I feel like Buffalo has the hardest schedule every year because I guess it's always a first-place schedule. But it just seems like every week they just play these huge games. Very curious, kind of like Houston in that spot as a home underdog. Sunday night, we got Cowboys-Steelers, two classic franchises. Steelers a 2.5-point favorite. I know we'll have a fun stream with Jersey Jerry for that. Over-under is 43. I feel like that one's like a touch high. Dallas 2-2, Pittsburgh 3-1. Very curious to see what happens in that one. Should be a hell of a game. And then Monday Night Football this week. Ready for Saints and Chiefs. A lot of talk about the Saints, Devontae Adams stuff. And will the Saints trade for him? I'm curious to see if they will. I'm very curious to see if the Saints will trade for Devontae Adams. Right now, the Raiders, I don't think Devontae Adams plays another down for the Raiders. He missed last Thursday at a hamstring injury. First game he's ever missed as a Raider. Looks like that they want a second-round pick and something else for him. He's one of the older receivers in the NFL at like 31, 32. But, man, he's already said he wants to go to the Jets or the Saints with Aaron Rodgers playing quarterback for the Jets, or Carr, who he played college ball with at Fresno and played with the Raiders. And he's good friends with the receivers coach for the Saints. Very, very curious to see, what happens here. I mentioned the Commanders as a potential dark horse because of their salary cap thing. But, look, I'm just saying it. I want Devontae Adams to the Saints. When you look at the Saints situation, they're 2-2, but they still have a really good chance in the NFC South. The receiving core has no depth behind Olave and Shaheed. You add Adams in the old Mike Thomas role with Olave and Shaheed and all those weapons, and you just figure the contract thing out is what I think you got to do, in my opinion. All right. And waiting on Billy. My bad. Billy's coming on here, of course. What wouldn't be Wake Up Mintzy if it was going smooth. That's for sure. Also, next weekend, I've already made my plans. I'm super stoked. All right, we got the link figured out with Billy. I'm super stoked. Booked my flight. Big South Louisiana weekend, a week ahead. So excited. Doing Ole Miss LSU Saturday night in Death Valley. Saints Bucks next Sunday in New Orleans. Kind of been holding back on the traveling, waiting on this big weekend, and just loving the Chicago weather. It's just been such a great time in the fall. It's the best time of year here, and you feel the hoodie weather, and, just so cool to live here. I didn't know what I was getting into when I moved here last Halloween, and I just love it. I can't be happier about it. All right, we got Billy Luchi, TexAds.com. Second time on Wake Up Mintzy. He joined us after the College World Series when A&M lost in the national championship to Tennessee. Now it's football season, though, and A&M's got a big-ass game. Saturday, 11 a.m., Kyle Field hosting Missouri. What's up, Billy? Good morning. How are you?
Mintzarella, what's happening?
Doing well, man. Just excited to talk some SEC ball with you. A lot of stuff to talk about on the Texas A&M front. But just, this is the main part of the football season. Maybe not the greatest slate of games this week, but definitely some interesting ones. None more interesting than the one in College Station at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Missouri, who has playoff aspirations, off a bye. When you look at like Missouri's season, they have a weak schedule for SEC. This is the second hardest game they have. They've at Bama in a few weeks. Nobody thinks they're going to win that. But other than that, they have at A&M, and then they have like Arkansas and Oklahoma at home. If Missouri wins this game, they have a legitimate playoff chance. They're a 2-point underdog. I think A&M, you got to be happy. I think with obviously the Notre Dame opener wasn't the best, but since then, big win last week against Arkansas. I know those games are always close. That's what the A&M Arkansas thing is. But it seems like A&M's got a really good defensive line. They've been having to shuffle the quarterback stuff because Wegman got hurt again and Marcel Reed's been out there. But overall, how are you feeling about season 1 of Mike Elko and how it's going?
Feeling pretty good. I feel like if you got back to me Sunday and A&M won a football game, then you start feeling amazing about it. 4-1 through 5 games. I wouldn't have been surprised at all. I could have seen 5-0 on the bad side. You could have seen 3-2 because Arkansas is always going to be close with A&M, and they had that road trip to the swamp in Florida, which to me was going to be Billy Napier's kind of last stand when you look at their schedule upcoming. You figured they'd lose to Miami. That was going to be a kind of a trap game, and like you said, you lose Connor Wigman before that one. If you'd have put all that in front of me, I would have been particularly worried about that one, but they handled business since Notre Dame, lost to Notre Dame in the final couple minutes of that one. So the season's gone about as I thought, Mintzy, but where I'm at, though, is a little more encouraged because of how A&M is starting to play along the defensive line. They're learning how to win games. That passing game looks like it's developing a little bit. Running game has been pretty lethal thus far. So if they can get that passing game to clicking, and I think they're going to have to this weekend because Missouri hasn't lit up the scoreboard. They didn't against Vandy with 20 points in regulation. They didn't against Boston College, but they have it in them with that skill talent. So I think this week might be a week where A&M is going to have to bring that offense to Kyle Field, and that'll start at the quarterback position.
Well, so looking back to the offseason, what I've noticed about A&M going in is, first of all, Mike Elko, knows A&M, defensive coordinator of the team that won the Orange Bowl and lost one game and barely missed the playoffs the COVID year. He knows the culture. And I've just sensed a whole new energy with the fan base because the Jimbo thing, it is what it is. It just didn't work, and it was time to move on. And I like the Elko hire, and it just seems like there's like a renewed passion and energy with it. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think no question about it. And Mintz, particularly within the program, with the players. Everybody listening knows this because we all have teams that we grew up watching. We all went to college. By the way, I have a question about the Ole Miss hype video from a few weeks ago that I want to get to before we leave because
we're going to get off A&M and talk.
I know you've heard it, but I want to. But anyway, we all have that, so we know. It comes a point where the message gets stale when things aren't going well for another coach, and you bring a new one in, and it either clicks or it doesn't. And when it doesn't, that new coach has to kind of wash everything out and start over. When it does, you have a chance to win quickly. I think Steve Sarkisian had to wash it out from Tom Herman. Josh Heupel had to wash it out from Sergeant Bilko. What was his name?
Butch Jones.
Butch Jones. I always get confused with Butch
Champions
Jones.
of Life.
Yeah. So Heupel had to wash it out. Venables had the same issues at Oklahoma. It remains to be seen, what year one under Elko will look like. But the kids have bought in. That's the biggest difference. I see the excitement at Kyle Field on Saturdays. I see it on our message boards, but it's really in the locker room. And it's really the way the guys are playing and the way those star players like those defensive linemen who have been the best unit on the team, I think, by far.
Oh, they're dominant.
They're dominant, and that's going to be the matchup this weekend because if you let Missouri get two-dimensional, you're screwed. And they've got a good running back. They got a great outside running game. A&M's going to have to set the edge and control that perimeter. If they can do that, it's going to be hard for anybody that plays this defense. If not, there is still a learning curve, I think, going on the back end. So if they can keep the guys up front off balance and off of Brady Cook, then they can have a successful day. If they can't run, they won't be able to do anything. And that's what happened with Florida, who ran for 50 yards, with Arkansas, who ran for 50, and 25 of those came on a fake punt.
No, that Arkansas, that's impressive too, because they have a really good running game with Jackson and Taylon Green. And, A&M, that's what I've seen when I've watched them. Obviously, Nick Scorton, the Purdue transfer, led the Big Ten in sacks. But that defensive line, even losing Walter Nolan, is just so stout. And it seems like the line of scrimmage, they're really tough. What I want to ask now about is on the offensive end. So it seems like, Wegman, 5-star recruit, ton of talent, mobile, can throw, upside's tremendous. Got, out for the year, week 3 or week 4 last year. Got hurt again this year. This week, I know it's kind of up in the air. He's been trying to throw with him and Marcel Reed. What's going on with that quarterback situation?
Well, I think he's practicing. So now it becomes, is he well enough at the end of the week? Is he well enough on Saturday to play? And I think Mintz, when everything you just said, and you think about his past, season-ending injury, comes back one game, plays poorly, hurts the shoulder. There's a mental component to this too. So if you go back to your starter, different scenarios here, but it's just similar in what Steve Sarkisian's having to do is decide, do I go back to the starter? It's a little different because A, it's Arch Manning there waiting in the wings, but B, Sark's coached Quinn Ewers his whole career. Okay, that's not it's not Tom Herman guy. That's Elko hasn't coached. He's coached 2 games of Connor Wigman. But do you give the starter his job back? There's a reason they picked him all spring, all fall camp. It's not like, I think Marcel Reed's done a hell of a job, but the offense isn't necessarily going up and down the field, and you're not throwing for 300, 400 yards a game. But the dude is winning, and he really definitely seems to have the locker room. He's got the temperament for it. He's winning with patient, mistake-free play in the fourth quarter. But Connor Wigman can flat out sling it, and he was the pick. So as the end of the week gets here, it's going to be really interesting to see how Elko and Colin Klein handle it if Connor is ready to go. And I think it's not just the shoulder. It's kind of the mental of, man, I've played one game and had 2 significant injuries. Is he ready to go? And if he's not, remember, you have a bye week, then you're the fighting Brandon Walker as a Mississippi State the week after that. So
not fighting that hard.
So there's a chance they fought a little.
No, they did. No, I thought last week they did. They were 38.5 point underdog and easily covered. So at least
I thought they'd cover that anyway.
That's crazy. 38.5. That's just. I don't know. That was too much for me.
So that's where I'm at with it. I think it's gonna be a late in the week decision, as in which Thursday. I think they let those QBs know what's gonna happen probably tomorrow.
Well, it's interesting.
That's if by the end of the week the coaches sit there and go, "Hey, the dude's ready to play."
Well, it's a fascinating situation because, as you said, with the bye week behind it, it seems like a natural spot to just go one more week of Reed, let Wegman get healthy, and then decide it over the bye week. But on the other hand, if you're Wegman, you've got to have just a huge sense of urgency here. You have to. Like you said, what's his mental state? He got hurt last year. He's been hurt this year. They didn't bring Riley. Elko came and did not. Riley Leonard went to Notre Dame. Didn't bring him to A&M because Wegman was there. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just kind of fascinated to see what would happen. Well, it seems interesting.
Think about what's at stake too. You mentioned Connor, what if Reed goes out and does kind of all click in that passing game and he has a monster game and a top 10 win, then we're not having this discussion anymore. On the flip side, this is a big game for Elko and the A&M program in year one. I talked about all those schools that muddled around 500 in year one of really what are now successful coaches in the SEC. For A&M, you have a chance. I'm not saying there's no West to be won, but you have a chance to have that badass first year like Brian Kelly did at LSU, that surprising first year. if they win that one with Mississippi State and a bye week upcoming, you might be hosting LSU sitting at 6-1 and ranked in the top 15 if you're able to win Saturday. So there's a real opportunity there. And then you look at the rest of that schedule. The Longhorns have been killing me, Mintzy, because I keep saying they've got the easiest draw you could ask for in the SEC in not just year one, but years 1 and 2. And they shut off right there. You know how it goes. They shut down. They don't hear anything else you say. I follow that up by saying A&M got a hell of a draw as well. Mm-hmm. They don't play Ole Miss. They don't play Tennessee. They don't play Georgia. They don't play Bama. What more can you ask for? And they get Missouri, LSU, and Texas at home.
Yeah, and I'm so excited. It's good, so good for college football that Texas and Texas A&M get to play. And thank y'all for taking Thanksgiving night back over, so now I can Thanksgiving.
We haven't done that yet, but they need to. I don't like it. Did you like? Oh,
I'm thrilled. I hate the Thanksgiving night thing.
I do
hate
too.
it. Dude, it's horrible. It's horrible.
A lot of Aggies and Longhorns disagree with me because it's tradition, but I mean, put it on Friday night. That's fine too for me. But just I don't like it Thanksgiving night. That's just
no, and especially with the college town thing, with it being a college station, everybody's got family and Houston. You know what I mean? It's just logistically a nightmare. I want to ask you. So obviously the biggest story, your old rivals Oklahoma and Texas, first year in the SEC. I want to start with Oklahoma. Man, I ain't never seen something like what Venables made that freshman quarterback go through last week. He had to start his first game in college as a true freshman on the road at Auburn without his top 5 wide receivers, and they still somehow won. They won because Auburn threw that pick 6. But, that's a crazy ask. I know Jackson Arnold, it wasn't going well, but, man, I mean, that is wild to put that kid out for that situation. I mean, that's, I don't know.
I guess with a bye week. After, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess the specter of Texas was looming, and they wanted desperately to get a game in under him. I think they also knew that if they'd lost that game at Auburn, that might be the worst SEC team they play this year. And if they lost that one, what were they going to do? And they gave up 300-something yards to Peyton Thorne.
Yeah, 500 total.
And they're supposed to hang their hat on defense under Brent Venables and Norman. I'd be really concerned if I were an OU fan right now. But I did like what Hawkins showed in that comeback as both a runner and as the game went on. He hit some big throws. So seems like a winner. Seems like a guy that can really juice that team up. But, man, with Texas upcoming, I don't know. I'm waiting for that Longhorn defense to be tested, but I'm looking at the schedule, and there's not a lot of offensive-minded teams. I'd love to see Texas and Ole Miss go up and down the field. I'd love to see the Horns and Josh Heupel and Nico in Tennessee, Milroe in Texas, and Bama run it back. We're not going to get any of that. The toughest teams they're going to play are Georgia defense, Kentucky ball control and defense, which about.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that Kentucky front seven. I've only been having night.
And A&M right now, which is running game defense. So, yeah, talk to me a minute about that game.
Okay, let's talk about it. All right, so the Ole Miss thing.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just give you my quick thing on it. One of the few big mistakes. First of all, not playing anybody non-conference the first 4 weeks at all. It's like one thing, and Ole Miss didn't know that Wake Forest was going to be that bad when that game was scheduled. I get that. But they knew Furman, Georgia Southern, and Middle Tennessee weren't any good. And last year, Ole Miss won at Tulane, who was a bowl team, and beat Georgia Tech week 3 as a bowl team, and had to play games into the fourth quarter and get into actual situations. I mean, they played 4 scrimmages. When they got in a tight game, they weren't ready for it because they've had no simulation of that. When I look at what happened in the Kentucky game, the biggest thing was the Kentucky front seven, which shut down Georgia, dominated the line of scrimmage. Ole Miss took 4 offensive line transfers who have 1 million career starts, but I don't know that any of them are elite. And that's what got exposed. And when you look at these spread offense teams, the way to always beat them is just hammer them at the line of scrimmage because there's just that's the way to beat them. Kentucky was actually rushing 3 and 4 and still able to get pressure and just dropping 7 or 8 every play. And that defensive tackle, that's going to be a top 5 pick, just wrecked Ole Miss.
Yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what happened. And then on the other side of it, The defense for Ole Miss played fine, except for the DBs are holding like crazy. And Kentucky got 4 or 5 key third down pickups on holdings and PIs. And, hit that big fourth down late in the fourth quarter. But kind of one of those games where I'm just going to be honest, Kentucky deserved to win the game. If you watch that game, Kentucky controlled it. They controlled the line of scrimmage. Ole Miss almost pulled it out and just got it in the locker room, which was what I was hoping for it to happen. But, it was a tough deal. And when you look at this week, Lane's taking it hard, obviously, as is Jackson Dart. I'm curious, what do you think? This is the bounce back spot. This is – they had the reality check last week. Now you're playing at South Carolina, who's off a bye. And historically, South Carolina is really tough at home as an underdog in these SEC games. This is kind of what they've done forever. Like, they play down to G5 teams, and they play up in the spot. And they have a bye. Sanders and Sellers are both healthy. I'm a little nervous about it, but I do kind of think this is like, if Ole Miss gut check time, you got to have an effort here. I think they're going to pull it out.
Well, you mentioned Walter Nolan and him and Princely and those transfers on the D-line and Pegues and those guys. They better, Sellers is fully healthy, which I think he should be with an ankle from back in LSU. They better buckle up their chin straps and be ready to play grown man football for 4 quarters, because South Carolina control the clock too, and their defense will get some stops against Ole Miss. That A&M has to go to South Carolina later in the year off of a South Carolina bye. They got a nice little setup playing Ole Miss and A&M at home after byes. But I think that's a tricky game. I like Ole Miss in it, but their toughness.
I can't lay the 9. I ain't laying no 9.5 on the road.
I wouldn't do that. Their toughness is about to be checked though. And here's the one thing I'm gonna do something I never thought I'd do. I'm gonna defend Lane Kiffin here.
Okay.
Because you know the history with him and Jimbo, and he comes at A&M, and it's for shtick. I totally get that. No offense to Ole Miss, but he probably would have taken that job if they'd offered it to him. But Lane Kiffin is Lane Kiffin because he does what he does. It's all the Twitter antics. It's the shade he's throwing. It's all part of the deal. Come to the sip in the end zone, all that stuff. And Mintzy, I've watched. And I've watched A&M fans overstep, and we get out in front, and it backfires on you. I was watching Ole Miss embrace all of these things. The TikTok dances, the sip in the end zone, come to the sip, Juice the golden retriever. Or is he a lab? I should know that. He's a lab. I have a golden retriever. I'm sorry, Griffin. I'm sorry, Graham. No offense. The lab, Juice, adorable dog. The TikTok dances with his daughter, the videos. Now, all of a sudden, none of that's good. Now the Ole Miss fans want to hold that against him. You can't do that. I'm
not holding anything against Lane. I'll point blank.
Deal.
No, I'll point blank say it. I'll defend Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss forever, because he's built, you have to have perspective on things. And you would have thought COVID was going on with how bad it was in the Matt Luke era with the attendance before Lane came in. And Lane's put a whole new energy, the branding, the social media, everything. He's made it the hot program. And so, okay, they lost a game. But, think about where this thing was 4 or 5 years ago. You can't. I don't know.
He's the best thing ever to happen to Ole Miss football, right, since probably the Mannings. And then, to me, secondly, he does strike me as the type that if they lose, if they went 9-3 this year, which I think Ole Miss gets in the playoff. Put me on board. They get it right this week. Barely. Close game. They get it right. I think they get in at 10-2.
I love the optimism. After losing at home to Kentucky as a 15-point favorite, I'm just focusing on 1 week at a time at this point.
True. But I think they do. But what you don't want, just knowing these coaches over the years, personally, away from football, not just at A&M, but at other places, you can tell the types that will get frustrated really quickly if the sentiment turns and they kind of go, well, I'm going to get out before you. I would just be, if I'm Ole Miss, stay the course, stay patient. He's done a hell of a job there. And I think he will this year too. But what gets interesting to me, if they get in that 9-3 range and somebody like Florida comes calling. But that's a long way off. But I'm just saying, I saw it, and I'm like, damn.
Well, my thing with it, and this is interesting because you know all about the NIL world. We're in this totally new era. All these guys like Walter Nolan that came to Ole Miss came to fight for a playoff spot. They didn't come to go 8-4. And so if it goes bad and Ole Miss loses to South Carolina, loses the second game, it could go real bad with that LSU next week. And so we'll find out everything this week. But, like, what I'm curious about is, like, that attitude with all the one-year guys that aren't loyal to Ole Miss, that are there, NFL careers ahead, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think you've kind of sometimes seen that with, like, the Florida schools, like, historically, where, you don't see those Florida schools ever go 8-4. They go 6-6, so they compete for titles. Yeah, A&M. No, y'all tried that
class
too.
Class of 22, it wasn't portal, but it was all that class full of 5-stars. And, while that $30 million number was insane, it was still whatever it was a class full of guys that came in and said, we're going to come here and change college football and win a national title. And they did take some risks on some 5-stars that, I don't know about, what this guy's going to be like in a locker room. And it spectacularly backfired. And it wasn't a $30 million class, but in some ways it was a $75 million class because
the Jimbo buyout.
It didn't work. It blew up, and the locker room blew up, and you lost a coach because of it. So
I'm curious. Okay, I want to touch on Texas for a second. So you mentioned how are they going to manage? I think Quinn Ewers is going to be the guy when off this bye. I mean, Arch looked great, and I know he's the future, but it just seems very natural. Sark got Quinn, and he's played really well. I feel like off this bye, Quinn's going to start against Oklahoma, and they're just going to go with him while he's healthy. Is that what you think is going to happen?
Yeah, for sure. I think they'd be nuts to do anything different. And the good thing is, and I say the same thing about A&M with Wigman and Marcel Reed. I think Ewers and Arch are probably pretty easy to deal with in the front of just sitting them down as a coach and explaining to them what's going on. But I think Ewers deserves it. He is your starting quarterback. Arch is the starting quarterback there of the future. There's no question. And he has the benefit of knowing that. So as much as he's going to want to play in that game, he understands it. And he's like, okay, I probably get another crack at it this year with the way quarterbacks in the SEC go. I mean, it just happens that way, and he's not going to be happy about it, but I think he'll be a great team player about it because he went into this year thinking it's next season. I think if you don't play Quinn and Quinn's healthy and ready to go, you could run the risk of losing him mentally in terms of, I would think that would be, you would have shafted Ewers because he was playing great before the injury. They were moving the ball and scoring a ton of points.
Dominated at Michigan.
Dominated at Michigan. He's played in the Red River rivalry. He's played against OU. He's beaten them. He's lost to them. He gets it. And by the way, if he does get hurt, Arch Manning will just put his helmet on and run out there like he started the game. I think he's proven that much that he's fine with just the maturity. I would say it's surprising, but it's not. It's a maturity, that you'd expect from a guy that grew up in the game and stuff. And I'm here talking about A&M and stuff. And that's, don't forget one thing about Marcel Reed and his kind of steadiness in late in games. If that happens again this week, this guy was, his dad was a 10-year head coach at Tennessee State. So like Arch, he grew up around the game. And when you got guys like Manning like that, you give Quinn the start. If it's A, not going well, or B, if he gets banged up again, you turn to him. He's out there and he's prepared all week like he was going to start. So I think they're fine. They're beyond fine at quarterback over there. They're probably as well off as anybody in the country.
Yeah, the Quinn thing, I mean, I think he's definitely the guy, but he's been super injury prone his whole career. So there's a good chance. There's a good chance Archie's shot. I want to ask you, okay, looking at the SEC landscape right now, how would you, I don't want to say put on you on the spot on the rankings, but like you look at, Bama, unbelievable win over Georgia. DeBoer's doing great. I still think Georgia has these slow starts to games, but they're still elite. You got Tennessee, you got Texas, you got all these teams. How would you have them ranked? How basically do you think Tennessee's the best team in the SEC?
I'm close to that, but I also Who have they played?
I mean, they've
I
just
mean,
killed.
I get a little.
NC
I get a
State's
little nervous.
horrible.
What NC State has turned out to be has really, and they almost lost to Western Carolina, so we should have paid attention to that. That's not your normal NC State, tough, hard-nosed, like hard-to-beat team. So I'm a little reluctant to put Tennessee up there. They haven't played anyone. Because of what I saw starting from about the third quarter against South Florida, through going up to Madison, Wisconsin, and doing what they did, and then what they did against Georgia, not just level set and winning that game late, and some of the plays they made to win that game, but what Milroe looked like and jumping out on those guys 28-0 or whatever it was, 30-7.
Yeah,
dude, like they deserve to be number one. I think they're the best team in the SEC right now. I'd put Texas 2, Tennessee 3.
Okay.
It's crazy to feel like I'm putting Georgia 4, but they barely beat Kentucky. They were getting smoked by Bama before they just started saying, hey, just throw up fade passes and let's see if we can catch them. Georgia, I can't believe I'd put them at 4, but they're starting to look more like they did just before Kirby got them over the hump to me, which is defense. Like I say defense, what happened this week, but the offense without the fearsome weapons like Bowers and even McConkey and the skill guys. So they're kind of looking like they did just before they flipped it. And when Stetson Bennett figured out the quarterback position and kind of air raiding down there with that running game. So I got them there for now. I think Texas will beat them in Austin. That's just me.
Georgia. I think one of the things on Georgia that I've been talking about this year, they've benefited so much from the East being weaker the last few years. They got the hard. I mean, at Kentucky, at Texas, at Ole Miss, at Bama. I mean, they're getting payback for all those years with this schedule this year. Do you think they're a 24-point favorite over Auburn? Do you think Georgia is this like a bloodbath here on the bounce back, or does Freeze somehow fight as an underdog like he's known to do?
I think they throttle them, and I think the reason why too is Auburn. People forget, for as bad as Auburn was last year, they really should have beaten. We know Bama. They should have beaten Bama. They should have actually beaten Georgia. Remember that game early in the year? I think it was the week after A&M beat Auburn 27-10. Should have been worse. And I knew A&M wasn't a great – that was an A&M team that got dusted by Miami a couple weeks earlier. 27-10. Georgia comes onto the Plains last year with Bowers and everybody. They go out there, and I think Georgia was only a 13.5, 14-point favorite. I thought that was the easiest, safest bet in college football that year, no matter how much the line stunk. But it was Auburn should have won. So I think because of that, Georgia pummels them. I go back to Bama, though, and it's funny that I do think DeBoer nearly botched that thing. Mm-hmm. But I will say this. It makes me laugh how many people were sitting there going, Kalen DeBoer, what are they going to be like? Look, I know the guy's not Nick Saban. This dude's like 120-10 as a head coach. He took the Washington Huskies to the national title game. We talk a lot about Texas and the SEC this year, and as good as that team is, and Ewers and those players, and Sark, he kicked the crap out of them if you watch that football game. I don't care.
Oh, yeah, it's 45-30,
They dominated that game, and if the running back doesn't get hurt with under 2 minutes left to stop the clock, they win by 2 touchdowns. At Washington. And he's looking at Alabama and going, oh, you guys are going to give me these players and this home field advantage? Like, okay. So Kalen DeBoer is an elite coach. I don't care how it went down the stretch in that game. Alabama went from the best coach of all time to a top 5 at worst coach in college football. So they're not going anywhere.
No, and the quarterback developing thing with him, looking what he did with Penix to Washington and even Haener at Fresno State, and now Milroe looks like Lamar Jackson out there. One of the Heisman Trophy frontrunners. No, I mean, can't say enough about him on that front. Well, cool. Well, what's going on at TexAgs? I know y'all are staying busy. I know you run TexAgs.com. Y'all have quite quite a good business. And loyal. Look, Aggie's one of the most loyal fan bases, if not the most loyal in the country. And seems like things are going well there in Aggie land these days.
They're going better than Casey Smith would have you believe. I tried to make you spit that drink out with that one. Casey needs some backup up there against that crew. You know it. You're in the same boat. It's like gang up central. Casey needs backup. Y'all should band together and fight everybody else. But no, it's going great. We got a brand new studios down here, so we need to get you down here during baseball season. Check it out, and then just busy as hell. Should be I think Buzz Williams has something nice cooking in basketball, and then you and I are just baseball.
Oh yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm already can't wait to
basketball.
see what happens this year after Slosh League. But A&M got everybody came back and was loyal. The talent level on that team is staggering. So I mean, this is going to be fascinating, especially when Texas plays Texas A&M next year. I think it's at College Station too.
I went to the Astros the last 2 days, so that deal's done. The dynasty's over and dead and done with, courtesy of the Detroit Tigers. I think your boy Bregman probably leaves, and that's that in Houston. No spring.
7 straight
Correa,
ALCSs and 2 World Series titles, though. I mean,
It was pretty incredible. It was a fun part of every year was going to these, each round, and then ALCS World Series games just up the road here in the middle of football season. These midweek games. It was a blast. So it was kind of disappointing yesterday, but that Detroit team's fun. They're fun to watch. And then so with that said, it's time for, we're going second half of this college football season and covering the hell out of it. And Mintzy, I wish we had a road trip to Oxford this year.
I know, I do too. But I'm going to try to make it to Texas in the spring. I gotta go to. I got to check out Bluebell and just A&M baseball because it's the blowing the bubble, a great fan base and tradition. And,
yeah.
Obviously everybody can be watching this season after making the national championship last season. Well, Billy, thank you so much for joining us. Love having you on Wake Up Mintzy, presented by Dude Wipes. One quick programming announcement before we get out of here. We're going to be Monday through Wednesday next week. So we're going to go Monday through Wednesday. Saints have a Monday night football game, so we're going to change it up and go Monday through Wednesday instead of Tuesday through Thursday. And then I'm going to do a ton of content with Ole Miss, LSU, and Saints Bucks. For Tyler Moody, Billy Luchi, follow him on Twitter. And we're going to get out of here. Thursday night stream, Falcons and Bucks. Join us tonight. Let's have us a day, boys. Man, I love fall. Man, I love fall. The leaves are changing, football, and Stella Blue coffee. And this season, maple pumpkin pie. But my morning routine would not be complete without Pumpkin Spice Dude Wipes.
Oh, Mintzy, let it rip.
Cheers, furry fellas. Coffee that fuels you, wipes that clean you.